I thought I broke my marriage with cruel words and careless laughter, but when my husband walked away without looking back, I realized he'd been hiding something all along, something that makes me wonder if I ever really knew the man I loved. I never thought I would be the kind of woman telling this story. I always believed I was in control of my life, that I understood love and loyalty, that I knew how to keep something precious safe in my hands. Yet here I am, sitting in my childhood bedroom surrounded by walls I outgrew years ago, with a suitcase in the corner and a hollow ache in my chest that refuses to fade. My name is Lily. I am 24 years old, and I may have just destroyed the best thing I ever had. When I met Jack, I was a sophomore in college and he was a senior. He was the quiet type, the one who sat in the back of the lecture hall taking meticulous notes, while I sat in the front row making everyone laugh with my sarcastic comments. He had a way of noticing people without demanding they notice him back. Our first conversation happened because I dropped my notebook down the stairs of the campus library and he picked it up before I could reach it. He smiled, just a faint curve of his lips, and handed it to me without a single word. I remember thinking he was mysterious, maybe even aloof, but there was something grounding about the way he moved, as if nothing could shake him. We fell in love slowly, the way autumn shifts into winter without you realizing it until the air turns crisp and the leaves are gone. He wasn't flashy. He didn't shower me with grand gestures or loud declarations. Instead, he remembered the little things, how I liked my coffee, the way I hated movies that ended abruptly, the fact that I always carried an extra pen because I hated borrowing one. I thought I was the one who brought color and excitement into his life. I thought he needed me to make things vibrant. I never stopped to think that maybe he was the one who kept me steady. We married a year after I graduated. It was a small ceremony, just family and close friends. Jack's vows were simple, steady, and full of a quiet devotion that I took for granted. We moved into a modest house in a quiet neighborhood. Jack worked long hours but never complained. I didn't have a job, partly because we agreed I would take some time to figure out what I wanted to do, and partly because Jack never pressured me to contribute financially. He cooked, cleaned, paid the bills, and still found time to make me feel special. Or at least he tried. I see now that I started drifting away before I even realized it. It began when I reconnected with old college friends who lived for the rush of loud music, crowded bars, and impulsive road trips. They looked at my life with Jack as if it were a cage, even though it had once felt like a sanctuary. They teased me for being tied down so young, told me I was wasting my best years playing house with a man who was too soft to challenge me. I should have defended him. I should have defended us. Instead, I let their words seep into my mind like a slow poison. At first, it was small. I would roll my eyes when Jack asked if I wanted to stay in for the night. I would sigh when he reminded me to be careful driving home late. Then the joke started. One night after too many drinks, I told my friends that Jack would probably jump off a cliff if I asked him to. They laughed, and I laughed too, soaking in the attention without realizing how hollow it was. That night was the first cut, and I kept sharpening the knife. Jack never confronted me, not once. Even when he overheard my friends calling him whipped, even when I joined in their laughter, he didn't raise his voice. He kept being the man I married, bringing me coffee in the mornings, leaving little notes in my purse, asking about my day with genuine interest. I mistook his silence for weakness, not realizing it was a strength I didn't deserve. The night everything began to unravel was the neighborhood barbecue. The air smelled like grilled meat and fresh-cut grass. String lights twinkled in the backyard as music drifted from the speakers. Jack stood at the grill, flipping burgers and chatting politely with whoever wandered near. I was at a table with my friends, half-drunk and buzzing with the thrill of being the loudest voice in the group. Someone made a joke about their husband being trained, and before I could stop myself, I turned it into a performance. I called Jack spineless. I said he didn't know how to say no to me. I made it sound like I had him on a leash, and my friends roared with laughter. It wasn't until the laughter died that I realized something had shifted. The air felt heavier. The music seemed distant. I turned and saw Jack standing a few feet away, holding a plate he had just taken off the grill. His face was calm, but his eyes were different, cold, distant, final. He set the plate down, looked right at me, and said, "We need to talk." I followed him to the side of the house, my heart racing, but I still thought I could smooth it over with a laugh or a kiss. Instead, he turned to me and said, I'm done being your punching bag. I gave you everything, and all you've done is tear me down. I'm leaving. You can pick up your things from the porch." Then he walked away before I could even respond. I chased him, panic rising in my chest. But when we got home, my bags were already packed. He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just told me no more. "You don't get to treat me like this and think I'll stay." When I refused to leave, he said he would call the police. That's when I knew this wasn't a fight we could come back from. This was an ending. I left that night, walking past neighbors who pretended not to see my tear-streaked face. My friends didn't say a word. I slept in my old room at my parents' house, staring at the ceiling, replaying every cruel joke, every dismissive glance, every time I chose strangers' laughter over his love. It's been days since then. I've called, texted, begged for him to talk to me, but he hasn't answered. I don't know if he ever will. I broke something that can't be fixed, and the worst part is, I knew all along he was the best thing in my life. I just never thought I'd lose him. Yet a part of me can't shake the feeling that there's something more behind the way he left. Something in his eyes that night hinted at more than just hurt. There was a resolve there, a certainty, almost as if he had been preparing for this moment for longer than I realized. And I can't help but wonder what he's doing now, what plans he made in silence while I was too busy chasing the approval of people who didn't care about me at all. The silence from Jack was worse than any argument we could have had. Arguments meant there was still something left to fight for. Silence meant the door was closing, and I was on the wrong side of it. Every morning I woke up in my old bed, reached for my phone, and saw nothing. No missed calls, no messages, not even a read receipt on the last text I sent. It was as though he had erased me from his life entirely. My parents tried to be supportive in their own way, though I could tell they were disappointed. My mother had warned me about taking Jack for granted. My father had once told me that good men were rare, and I should be careful with one who truly loved me. Back then I had rolled my eyes, thinking they were being dramatic. Now their words rang in my ears like a cruel echo. I kept telling myself I could fix it, that if I just saw him in person, if I could look into his eyes and explain how sorry I was, he might understand. But every time I went to the house, the locks had been changed. My belongings were gone from the porch. Once, I thought I saw him through the window, but when I knocked, there was no answer. It felt like chasing a shadow. A week after the barbecue, I got a call from an unknown number. My heart leapt, hoping it was him, but it was a woman's voice. Calm, professional. She introduced herself as Amanda Hughes, a divorce attorney. My stomach dropped as she explained that Jack had filed papers. She said she needed to arrange a time for me to review and sign them. I barely heard the rest. My chest felt tight, my throat burned, and I could barely breathe. I wanted to tell her there had been a mistake, that we could work this out, but the words wouldn't come. The next day, I saw Jack in town. He was sitting outside a small cafe, sipping coffee and reading a book. He looked different. There was a lightness to him, a calm confidence that I had never seen before. He wasn't wearing his wedding ring. My feet moved before I could think, carrying me toward him. He looked up when I stopped at his table, and for a second I thought I saw something in his eyes, a flicker of the man who used to love me. But then it was gone, replaced by that same unreadable expression from the night he left. I told him I was sorry, that I had been selfish, cruel, blinded by people who didn't matter. I told him I loved him, that I would do anything to fix what I broke. He listened without interrupting, his gaze steady. When I finished, he took a breath and said, "I believe you're sorry, Lily. But sorry doesn't change what happened. Sorry doesn't erase the way you treated me, the way you made me feel small in front of others. You didn't just hurt me, you erased me from my own marriage." I wanted to argue, to tell him we could rebuild, but then he leaned back in his chair and said something that made my blood run cold. "There's more to this than you know. More than I'll ever tell you." I froze. My mind raced with questions, but before I could ask, he stood up, left some money on the table, and walked away. I wanted to follow him, but my legs felt rooted to the ground. What did he mean? Was there someone else? Had he been planning this for months? That night, I couldn't sleep. I thought about every moment in our marriage, every quiet evening, every time he had been lost in thought while I laughed with friends. I began to notice patterns I had ignored. The way he had started working late more often in the past year, the way his phone was always locked, the moments when he would go outside to take calls in a low voice. Had there been secrets between us long before I ever heard him? 2 days later, I got a message from one of my old friends, the same ones who had egged me on to make jokes at Jack's expense. She told me she had seen him at a restaurant with a woman she didn't recognize. They looked close. Too close. I told myself it was probably nothing, but a part of me couldn't let it go. I went to that restaurant the next evening and waited in my car across the street. Hours passed. Then, just as I was about to leave, I saw him. He stepped out of the restaurant with a woman, tall, elegant, with dark hair and a confident stride. They laughed about something, and he touched her arm gently as they walked away together. My chest tightened, a mix of jealousy, fear, and something deeper, something that felt like the ground shifting beneath me. I wanted to believe this was just a date, a rebound, a way for him to move on. But his words at the cafe haunted me. There's more to this than you know. The next morning, a letter arrived at my parents' house. No return address, just my name written in Jack's handwriting. Inside was a single line. Stop looking for answers you're not ready to hear. My hand shook as I read it. The paper smelled faintly of his cologne, the one I used to bury my face into on cold mornings. I wanted to crumple it, to scream, to demand he tell me everything. Instead, I folded it neatly and put it in the drawer of my nightstand. It's been 2 weeks since then. I still don't know what he meant, and I don't know if I ever will. All I know is that the man I thought I knew inside and out may have been living a life I was never part of. A life that was waiting for the moment I pushed him away for good. The worst part is not knowing whether I lost him because of what I did, or whether I was always destined to lose him. And that question is the one that keeps me awake at night. Because deep down, I'm not sure I want the answer.